All right, so this is the first in a series of classes / meetings that we're going to do weekly. We've been doing a lot of communicating with staff and asking a lot of questions about what people think we can improve in and what we can do better. At Kalos, we've always had a lot of emphasis on training and on supporting the trades and trades education, but there are certain positions, certain segments that maybe you feel like you're not getting as much kind of continuous drumbeat of training as you'd like. So that's why we're going to do this. It's always best to do something. Start where you are and do something with what you've got. And we've got a really great body of trades experts who have a lot of different experiences. So we're going to just start sharing them on a weekly basis. Today, I wanted the three of us to be here, and I'm thankful that Keith and Dad can make it. And we're going to just talk through project planning and communication. This is going to be, we have the presentation, but the presentation just sort of acts as a guide for you to kind of read along. I don't like reading slides. We're just going to kind of put it up, and then we're going to talk about the general topic. But as far as priorities that we're facing right now at Kalos, stuff that everybody's busy, we've got so much stuff going on at once. You know, it's like this is like peak moment. I wanted to have something that pretty much applied to everybody. That's going to be applicable, and that hopefully we can give some guidance on some things that will make a pretty quick difference. So not as technical as some of the other things, but I think in terms of impact, this is a topic that I felt like was going to be really important, and that's why I was excited to have these guys. So I would like to do less talking and have them do more talking, because they have a lot more experience on the projects front, especially in terms of construction projects, than I do. I want to start here, which is not the actual class, but I think it's important for the three of us to kind of talk about why we did this and what our thoughts are about the business before we forge on. Because we got an hour and a half here, it's very rare that we all three talk to you at once. I wanted to give these guys a chance to just talk through like what is Kalos, what is the fundamental principles behind what we do. So we'll start with Dad, and that'll give Keith a chance to think about what he wants to say.
Wow, I was hoping Keith would go.
No, you're first.
I really wasn't ready for this question. My first thing that came in, like, I thought we were gonna have a contest. Who's more photogenic?
Oh.
I mean, clearly I win. Clearly I win. I don't know. I mean, who wears the headset to the photo shoot? Yeah. So most of you guys know, the Kalos means integrity in Greek, and that's the reason we went through different names. And my original had the idea of white hat. And that didn't go very far. Like they were like, this is the worst idea in the world. I thought if everybody wore white hats, like we're the good guys, right? But nobody liked that one at all.
So you can see why.
Yeah, sure.
The lack of response from the room here makes it.
But I think
I hope you pan to the room so that you can see their faces. So
sure.
Like, no.
Mercy movement.
Okay, good. We're not no mercy.
So I think
no mercy at Kalos. It's like no crying in baseball.
So integrity as far as projects go, and like maybe Kalos as a whole, I think at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants. That's what you want when you hire somebody. Like, when do you get frustrated? Like I just had this recently. I get really frustrated. It was like their practices were deceitful. Like they purposely had a track to kind of loop you in and then force you to do something. Of course, I never buy into those sort of things. And like. So integrity is being really upfront, being really honest. If you make a mistake, you admit it, and if you're clear about your objectives, you're clear about your concerns. We're clear to the customer. They have really healthy expectations, really big in what we do. Most contractors are terrible at that. They really are. But even on the field level, where a lot of you guys work, having clear expectations of everybody. We're fighting through that in job sites now. Like, it's not good enough. They're not meeting our expectations. Like, there's just, but I think that to me is what it is. It's like we're holding ourselves out to be, the best at what we do. And so what we need to be is the best at what we do, and always try to get better. And and in that, then we have customers that we're giving them what they're really looking for. And I find that as a consumer, whenever I'm not always looking for the cheapest price. And many of you know that when it comes to if it comes to some work, and it's like all that matters is price. Like that's a rule for us. I'm not interested. If doing good work and performing really well is not what the customer wants, they're not our customer. And it's not that we're expensive. I'm just not trying to be cheap. We're trying to be honest, because even if they get a cheap price, they're never going to get it done for that. They just aren't. But we can be upfront about it. This is what it costs. This is we can pay our guys a fair wage. We can make a fair profit. And there's stuff to argue in there for sure. But I think integrity is that, being really upfront and then doing your best to perform in that manner. And it's a really good business model. Treating people like you wanted to be treated. I mean, it comes down to that really basic thing. But that's what we want to be. I think from the beginning, that was the idea. We need to create a company that does good work, keeps your word, even if it costs us money. And we've had those, you know. We do it anyway. We do the right thing. And in the long run, it pays off, and I think it does. So, go ahead.
That's good. Bob, I'll touch on something that Bob said, which is really relational. Right? How do we treat one another? For us, you know, you're listening to your customer, and you can't always possibly do that thing that they're asking exactly how they want, but to communicate that, you know, to really try hard to meet their expectations. And so we're balancing that. We do a great deal of trying to help the teams as well, right? Because in the long run, that's going to help the customer. But to back up a little bit, because we're really on the, you know, less details. But yeah, that's the thing for me is relational. How are you going to treat people? Will you, you know, I came out of the aviation industry before we did this, and I had my own company, and it's identical. The idea is that you listen to what the customer is asking, you care about them, you do what you say you're going to do. And if that means that maybe you lost a little money on it, whatever, that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, that person will know whether you care about them or you don't care about them. And it's highly important in what I do every day. And it isn't just the customer, it's Phil and his team, it's Nathan and his team. And when everybody, and it's my, the guys that work with me, they know that I care about them, they care about me, and that's a really good recipe for doing business. It's a really good recipe for, for not having conflict as much as possible in your life, right? So coming out of the aviation industry, you know, these two guys kind of brought this to the table, and I closed that business down because I wanted to be a part of something with them. And it was exciting. I've always kind of been the type of person just does it himself, right? And so this was a good way to learn to collaborate, and I learned a great deal from Bob through the last 17 years and Bryan, and yeah, it's been really good. But I would just say relational is super important.
Yeah, so what I want to wrap up with is that what we're talking about here in terms of projects, in terms of planning, in terms of communication, comes down to these same things fundamentally. We're going to get into a lot of specifics, but I want us to make sure that we always keep that true north. Things go awry in an organization when we lose our mission, when we lose the direction of focus. And what tends to happen in a lot of cases is people have different micro objectives and they have different worldviews. And so when you have a different micro objective or you have a different worldview, you have a different way of thinking about things, often that can lead to conflict. But what I find time and time again is when people have a true north, they're all working towards the same thing, then those little micro kind of pieces and those changes in worldview or those variances in worldview still bring you to the same point, and you can still work together and accomplish really cool things. And that's what you see time and time again, both in Kalos, but outside Kalos. I mean, the people have come together to accomplish some pretty amazing things throughout history, and it's not because they all thought exactly the same. It's not because they all had all the same exact micro goals. So what we want to talk about is how you accomplish big things, how you accomplish projects, because that's what projects are. I want to take just a quick minute and talk about this vision for the future. We did an orientation this morning, earlier today, and we talked about the same thing. We have a desire, a strong desire to communicate to everybody and to also have an organization that makes it really clear through how we demonstrate what we actually do that continuous improvement is super important to us. And continuous improvement not only in terms of how we're accomplishing our jobs, but continuous improvement that you can feel within yourself. So this idea of you can look back on the work that you did 6 months ago and you're like, that wasn't great. That's a really good sign. If you can look back at what you did in the last job versus what you're doing in this job and you feel a little bit of like, oh boy, I should probably go back and take a look at that, that means that you're growing, and that's a really good sign. And the same thing is true in your personal and professional development. a lot of times you can't plan it out. You can't say this, I'm going to take this step and then this step and then this step and have that work out exactly how you would expect. But in retrospect, you should be able to look and see that you're growing as a person. That things are going better for you. You have better work-life balance. You're able to make life work better for you as you move forward. And that's something that we're committed to. Sometimes it's the really busy season and it feels like everything's crumbling and everything's falling apart. And that's where we're at usually about this time every year. But keeping that true north that we have this commitment to continuous improvement, and not just continuous improvement in terms of trade skills, but also in terms of your personal lives. That's really important to us, that we continue to do that, which is why we're doing things like we're doing today. So I just want to put that up there as far as the why. This is the why this is why we want to continue to do this. I will let you two kind of riff on this a little bit, however you see fit.
I'll start with the mission, the goal. Like really, really important. On time, on budget, satisfy customers. I'll talk about no excuses in a minute. It's a pet peeve of mine. But I think the idea is that we have this mission and we have a goal. And it's really easy to have other things creep in. And maybe it's like, I want to be respected. You could have that creep in, or hey, I want everyone to think I'm important, or it just various things come up all the time. And if you're a leader on a project, like you're constantly no. This is the goal. And then what are the steps this week we're doing? You're constantly redirecting people because they have other things. What'd you call it?
Micro goals.
Micro goals. They'll come in as just constant. And a really good project manager, a really good leader on projects never loses sight of the goal. They never lose sight of the objective. They're always the next step, tonight, tomorrow. Everything that we do is we're headed towards the goal. Like that's just what we do. And other things come up is fine. Like you can have a personal conversation with somebody now and then, but like we're not. But it's just really, really easy. It could be on, like I've been on big jobs where we had 400 people, and the plumbers are more interested in like hacking the electricians and ruining their stuff because they're having trade wars on a project. And literally, that's the most important thing to them, is to destroy the electrician's work. And they sabotage, and they plan, and they spend energy, and like they get really creative. And I've just seen awful things, and like it is just so unproductive. And if you don't catch it, if you don't redirect and refocus everybody, that's how jobs go bad. I mean, that really is, that is probably the number one thing that goes wrong. There's not somebody there that's like, no. And when you meet a really good superintendent, you'll meet them. Like, they're not, and I get that, I've been that way over time. It's not that I don't care, but I don't care. Hey, we have a mission here. And I'm like I know maybe let's just say if someone has some real issues in their life, I don't mean that, but like these other things that they have no place here. I don't care. Either get on board or go. Like it's just the way it is. We are going to finish this job on time, on budget, and the customer's we're gonna do really good work, and they're gonna be happy. And I'm not taking no for an answer, period. And part of the goal this week is we're going to have this much work done. This stage of the work's going to be done on this time. You have to have these points on any project of any size. And you just don't take no for an example. There will always be excuses why you can't. And really good project managers and really good leaders just don't take no for an answer. Now that's not to say sometimes stuff comes up. Like it's just nothing you can do. It happens. But I think the vast majority of the times, it's just someone with the attitude, like, no, we're going to do what we said we're going to do. We're supposed to have this section done by Friday. We're going to have it done by Friday. And I don't want to hear it. Like, you're committed to it beforehand, which goes with, it'll go into communication, make it really clear expectations, but like, no, we're going to get it done, And excuses, so I say this often, but I hope people hear me when I say this because I'm being very honest. I think the really big difference between when I meet successful people, and not just business or money, just successful people, they're really good people in their life, and unsuccessful people, if you had a group of them. And one really big difference that I found is unsuccessful people, they have something that the successful people don't. They have a really good excuse. And it's funny, they'll bring it up and they'll tell you. They do. Like you have a conversation, hey, what are you doing in your life? What's going on? Well, I had this thing happen, and I don't know. I mean, sure, I smoke pot on the weekends, and I get, but like, no. Because successful people, they have the same, everybody has struggles. We all have them. It's part of being human. Obstacles, struggles, they happen. And it's those people who are like, no, I'm not, like, I'm not stopping. I'm going to press through. I'm going to keep going. And stuff does come up that you can't. I mean, it's true. But I think for the vast majority, it's that attitude that really makes successful people, successful superintendents. Those are the people that move up the ladder. Those are the people that make more money. I mean, but it can be, it can go into your personal life. You know what I mean? No, I'm not going to do that. You know, I mean, what's a good husband? I don't know. What's a good parent? It's the same thing. Like you're bound and determined by some preset goals of what you're going to do, and you're not going to veer away from it.
I like that this is the biggest. However, this right here is that. Right? So if we're going to start high level, the project mission is that. And these other things make that. Right? So there's a big difference between strategy and planning. Right? So we would, when I'm planning things or strategizing how I want to do something, I'm thinking about satisfied customers because that's the mission. Right? These other things are going to lead to that. And so I will start from very stand back 30,000 foot view, like what is my mission to make that happen? Like how can I make that happen? And then you're going to get into a great deal of details to make this mission happen, but you never lose that. That's the most important. And this, how you get there is going to be really dynamic. It's going to keep coming at you and coming at you. You're going to keep working scenarios, hopefully, working through them. But you're trying to source reliable source data to create decision-making processes. But really, you know, when I think about how I tend to do things, it's important for me to start with context. When I get to the planning stage, the context is what am I trying to accomplish? And then I'll go in and I'll start doing some detailed planning based on how I'm going to make that happen. And then you'll maybe do some things and you'll back out again. It's kind of like not that I'm an artist, but it's kind of like a painter who will paint close, detailed, and then they'll stand back, right? And then they'll go back in and they'll see what the effects are of what they're doing, and so that they can change, they can move. And so that's, to me, this is a really good slide. I like it. Like,
no, you're criticizing my slide. It's
no, I like the slide.
It's a great slide.
Really important, but these are the things that make that. It's obviously relational, but big picture context, details. See what that cause and effect is, back out, see how it's changed, and then repeat. So, yeah, that's me.
Which is interesting because that is a phrase that I use a lot in troubleshooting air conditioning refrigeration systems is wide, narrow, wide. So we didn't prepare this, but it was actually something I did want to talk about here. As we think about projects, as we think about anything you're trying to do, you start very wide. You have to look at everything. You have to think through the project, and I'm sure Dad will talk about this a lot. It's the way that he does much of what he does, and Keith too. You think through the project from beginning to end. You don't just look at it as numbers on a page. You don't just look at it as widgets or labor units, or you actually think about, if I was going to do this, what would I need in order to accomplish this? I'm literally the guy in the job. I'm doing this. What do I need? And so you have that sort of vision, which does require a little bit of experience to gain that, and that goes back to what Keith said about initial resources. But that's very wide. But then when it's time to accomplish anything, you have to go very narrow. You have to focus in detail on the thing that you're doing. And troubleshooting, that's finding the source problem. That's finding, like, okay, why isn't this unit running? That's very narrow. But then once you make a change, this is all exactly what Keith just said, I'm just reiterating it. Once you make a change or something is done, now you have to go wide again. And as a leader of a construction project at any level, that's a huge part of what you're doing. You're planning wide, wide, wide. You're going in narrow, work's getting done. Then you're looking back and saying, is this good enough? Is this going to satisfy the customer? Does this fit in the entire plan? Does the plan need to be changed because something changed here? And that's what you're constantly doing. And you see a lot of people who are very good at one or the other. You see a lot of people who are very good at the narrow, like focusing on all the details and just detailed, and they don't want to back up and look at it. And you see a lot of people who all they want to do is plan and numbers and all that kind of stuff. But as a construction leader, as a trades leader, which is what these classes are all about, is about how to have really good trade skills. you have to have a measure of both, and you have to be willing to bounce back and forth between those two. All right, so in this segment, we're talking about planning. Now, I've got some specific stuff up on the slide that you can look at, which is not necessarily something you guys have to use, but I want you guys to just kind of talk through how you think about the planning phase of a project. You're basically just sharing your experience.
So I'll start, because then I'll throw Keith in. So I did most. When we started, I did all the bidding. On any commercial project, I did all the bidding. I did electrical too. So whenever you're estimating a project, and if you read things on estimators and all that, they can really envision this this thing being built, and you're kind of looking at it and you're thinking through, and you want to identify problem areas. You'll really run, like if you don't identify problem areas, like you'll really make some mistakes bidding, because there's some things like, whoa, we gotta build a sidewalk there, and there's a river in the way. Well, that'd be good to think about that, there's just, just really the complicated things, but you really do, you build it, and it's not hard. If you've been around for a while, it's not that hard to do. You kind of, you can build the project in your head, and you can kind of see it. And if not having that exercise is really difficult to be a good estimator, to kind of think through how long it's going to take, what's going to take longer than you think, what areas that aren't going to be as hard, and so spending that time to become familiar with the entire project for any superintendent, and it's the plans, right? But it's more than just looking at plans, it's envisioning what this actually means, when it says we're going to move frozen food 10 feet, to go out there and look at it and there's a cake decorating thing there, and this is just not, it looks really clean on a blueprint, and that's important to know what the blueprint says. But you have to go out and what does it really mean in the real world? Like what's in the way, what obstructions, what do we have to, there might be stuff you have to temporary, there's just all sorts of things that you need to look at and to really get a grasp of, but taking the time to think through and envision it, and to look at the different scopes or different areas that we're doing, going and looking at it and kind of just, envisioning the thing being built and identifying problems in that process. I think it's really, really important, and being thorough through that. Really, really good leaders have pre-thought through all the really sticky things on a project. They're very aware of it. You get outside, you're doing your front, if you have front sidewalks or front driveways, areas where there's a lot of people, you need to put some thought into that. You have an open store, and you got to keep it open, open and running. That's mainly what we do is open store things, and so it takes a lot of thinking through. So yeah, you want to, if you identify problem areas before they come, we're way ahead of the game. It's when you get in trouble, all of a sudden you get there, okay, we're starting, you get there, okay, tonight we're going to start, frozen food, and you get out there and whoa, then you call hey, we got a problem here, there's stuff in the way. Well, the night you're starting is not the time to have this discussion, about some serious obstacles in the way. It should have been thought about, one of the first things you did when you walked on the job. And
did you know there's no drains there where we're putting the new frozen food?
Yeah, well, they would show that. I'm just thinking. Yeah, maybe, So yeah, the further in advance you can identify problems and communicate with everybody. Much better. If you're asking questions at the beginning of a job about 2 months down the road or a month down the road, that's what you should be doing. This is coming up. We got to do this. This is on the fourth week. The schedules we have are pretty good, I think. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're a guide. But you need to think of you're not in week 2 and you haven't looked at week 3 yet. No, we should be thinking a good planner, project manager. You're this week, yeah, you're involved, but your mind's 2-3 weeks ahead. That's why we have 2-week look-aheads. That's the reason we have those, because that's what a project like that takes. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, so how many of us have opened up a set of drawings, you're on the job, and you couldn't possibly do what they've drawn, right? So we see that quite a bit, where it's really easy to draw something, and the more complicated the problem, the more the designer or architect a lot of times will just fluff past it. Because it's hard to draw, it's hard to communicate, so I just kind of throw something out there, get my job done, and move on. So planning is catching these things as soon as you're getting something, to engage as quickly as you possibly can and see what kind of bumps are in the road.
I got to add one thing I forgot.
Do you?
First, yeah, sorry, just I got so if everybody knows, what generally happens at Kalos for years is I was really good at identifying problems. hey, this is a problem. And then I did the next step for me was very simple. I say, hey, Keith, we got a problem. We need to figure that out. So go ahead. Because Keith is much better at details than I am. And I admit it. Like, I just like, okay, there you go. It's off my plate. Keith's got it.
In those planning stages, you know, if you can, like I'm blessed to be able to be involved in as they're drawing the drawings if we have a permitted job. And so in your early planning stages, it's what's drawn wrong. What can I do to make my and my team's life really easy when they get to the job where we don't have to do revisions? We don't have to do this twice, 3 times, you know. Because what they drew, that's what you got to build. That's when the inspector shows up, that's what he expects to see. So we can do a great deal of being really efficient just by being proactive in that planning stage of the actual plans, if we have the ability to do that. You are potentially costing yourself a lot of aggravation, money, time, energy on things that you should have never had to build. You know, architects and engineers are notorious for just throwing everything against the wall, see what sticks, and cover their butts, and we just build it. So it's a good opportunity. So a lot of the things that we can do to be efficient can be way in advance of ever being on a job swinging a hammer. You know, it's important. I've found that it's really paid off for us. But then, yeah, moving down through planning, yeah, it is that. Again, I touched on it earlier, is get started earlier, as early as you can. Start talking to your team. Work through it, like Bob said, work through it. I work through most tasks 6, 8, 10 times in my brain from different angles, you know. And you can almost see it fall apart in your head, like, yeah, if I do that, I need to adjust, whatever. So that's all planning. And then just, yeah, going and getting that source data, farming that out. You have to think of the questions, you need to get them answered. And then you need to distribute them to everyone that's going to touch. You know, if I'm looking at something and thinking, that's going to be a real problem for the fire sprinkler guys, I should probably be talking to the fire sprinkler guy today, you know? So just all of that, try to stay ahead of the game, because there's always going to be those times where you find yourself not ahead of the game.
The last line, plan out tasks and objectives for each day. Sure, I mean, if you're a superintendent on the job, and so you have all this planning, you have it all, and then, but still, like, it's what we do today, right? This is the next step, and wide, small, I guess, you know, and that's the small part of being, you know, to make sure everybody's clear what they're doing tonight. And I would throw in here, I mean, maybe later on, which I've always found really, really helpful, is setting goals for everybody and motivating them. Like, come on, you guys can get to that corner tonight, right? Like when I was your age, I could, you know. Really important, if they were in the Army or the Navy or Marine, tell them on the if they're from in the Army, you tell them, like on the last job there was a guy who was in the Navy and he did that much in one night, and I guarantee you he'll have it done all the way to that corner, right? So
wow. Anyway, I'm learning new things.
So anyway, no, that's kind of a joke, but I mean, I think you can engage people in that way and challenge them and motivate them and treat them like humans, but set a goal. Yeah, really, really give guys goals. It matters. Like, you know, hey, let's get to here tonight. You know, the drywall guys, whatever. The painter has to. He wants 4,000 feet of wall to paint every night, and you got to get this done so he can paint it. Just get it done to the corner. You know, make them understand. Just because you know they'll kind of be lackadaisical if you let them. But if you're going to create a tenor for a job, you're going to create a cadence. And if you create it, like, we're here to work, we're here to get stuff done. Everybody else will join in. And anyway, so.
Well, I was going to also mention, like, you're notorious for your pad of paper that you carry for each day. You know, like, you make your list for each day.
Sure.
And I think we talk a lot about technology. I'm a technology guy. I like technologies that can support us, but technology is only a tool. If you're not, the stuff we're talking about here, we'll talk a little bit about the tools, but the reason that things fall apart is not technology. And the way you know is because you can look at the Great Pyramids, and you can look at the Brooklyn Bridge, and you can look at all these things that were built with no technology. It's that daily detail. These are the things that have to get done, and then the follow-up to make sure that it gets done.
Right.
Fundamentally, if that got done every day, if every day you had a set of objectives, and at the end of each day you followed up to make sure those objectives were done, that's the bulk of what
Sure, there it is. It really is that simple.
Yeah, that's
You're
really
going to come to the end of the job and all the details are handled, and like there's going to be very little left, and it's going to be it's going to be a good job. Labor was good. We made money. Everybody got a bonus. Customers happy. Life is great. It's when you don't do that, and then you're at the end of the job and you have all this stuff, and I walk on and, like, you know, What's this? Why do we, this isn't done yet.
All right, so I'm going to talk through, and you guys can feel free to chime in, but I'm going to talk through, because I think sometimes when we do this sort of class, it feels like a leadership, and some people may not feel like it applies to them, but it applies to absolutely everybody. And so I want to start at the beginning. So we're talking trainees and apprentices. If you're a trainee or apprentice, there is this whole idea of managing or leading or planning or communicating starts with just you, right? So if you arrive on time and ready to work, that's a huge part of what we ask for. That's massive. And so all of the things we talk about with excuses and planning and communication and all that, well, that bleeds into your personal life that starts before the clock, right? So if you have communicated well in your personal life and you've planned and you've made good choices, then you're going to be able to show up on time, ready to work. You're not going to show up hungover. You're not going to show up late because your car didn't start, because you didn't give yourself any margin. You're not going to show up, well, traffic was bad, because you would have already thought about that. All of those things are the exact same skills that translate into being a construction leader. So it's, if you want to be able to lead at work, you have to first lead thyself. And that's the start when it comes to, everybody. But when you're new to the trade and you're learning, that's a huge part. Safety, making sure things are safe and you're not getting sloppy, you're keeping things clean. Learning how to follow plans and specs. I hear so many people, I hear this all the time. I want to learn how to read plans. Is there a plan reading course that I can take? And it's funny to me because you are in the best plan reading course that exists in the world, which is one wherein there are plans and you may read them anytime you'd like, right? It's true. Like, nobody taught me how to read electrical schematics. I mean, I went to school and they said, this is what this symbol means, this is what that symbol means, but guess what? Every plan has this thing called a key, and it has all that same information right there, right? And there's no better teacher than the reality of doing construction. There's no better teacher. So I get what people are saying, which is sort of that structured method of learning, and it would be nice if that existed in the real world, but with the different variations that we see in what we do, the best thing you can do is just spend some time reading plans and specs. I want to back up to identifying boilerplate. This is something that you were talking about with designers and how they'll just, architects and engineers will just throw stuff on there. There is so much boilerplate in our trade that just being able to identify the difference between boilerplate, which is just something that they put on every plan just because they put it there, versus things that they actually intend you to build, that alone is an enormous skill. To say, like, look, they drew this, and we see it all the time in mechanical, they'll draw specifications that have nothing to do with our market, have nothing to do with the type of equipment that we're installing. And they'll put all these specs there, and it's like, well, clearly that wasn't what they intended. Obviously, follow directions, read, listen, and learn, and take correction readily. Taking correction readily is the one I want to probably focus on more than any other here, which is this, the idea that we're moving into a society, and this just isn't good or bad, it just is, where I think we're knee-jerking to a past generation who was maybe a little too abrasive, maybe a little too gruff and angry, right? And so now people don't want to be that way. They don't want to treat people badly with the way they speak to them. But what often happens is just having your work criticized means that you're being personally attacked. And those are two very different things. Especially when you're in these first several stages of your career, you need to have your work criticized. If your work isn't being criticized, you're not going to grow. So people who care about you, and I think can think back, and I'm sure you guys can too, the people who have been the most influential in your trades career are those who are the most critical of your work. They would tell you it's not good enough. You have to redo it. That doesn't look right. That's not square enough. That's not, you get that type of feedback. And so you have to be willing to take that correction. And you move into the tradespeople and journeymen. It's all the same sort of stuff, but now you have to begin to take more responsibility for proactive communication. So you're actually starting to plan out your day. You're starting to identify this stuff that we're talking about. So everything that we're saying here, the stuff we've already spoken of, applies to tradespeople, journeymen, foremen, superintendents, project managers. You all have the same opportunity to not only look at today's work, but look at the next week. Look at what resources you're missing. Think about who you need to communicate with in order to get those resources. One thing that is a massive advantage about Kalos, and they've already talked about this a little bit, is that you have within our employee directory tradespeople with so much different varied experience, even in things that we don't technically even do. That alone is a massive advantage that we have. Because working as a team, you don't have to go outside of the team in order to find those answers, which can be a little challenging at times. So just knowing who to call for things alone is something that in this sort of middle zone, you can definitely have that at the ready, rather than just feeling like, oh gosh, well, it's all on me, I can't, I don't know what to do here, so I'm just going to leave it.
Or that someone expects me to know something that I don't know.
One line that you hear a lot in the trades, and I'm involved a lot in online training, so you get this a lot. People will say, well, you should know that. It's like, that doesn't matter.
Right.
There is no should in you should know it. That doesn't make any sense, right? If you either know it or you don't, and if you don't, then get the answer.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that you have to know every answer all the time to do everything. So that's the other side of it. Like, all of us have insecurities. So pushing through your insecurities is a different thing. But when you're faced with something that you really need some additional information, it doesn't matter if you should know it or not. If you don't, just get the answer. It's fine.
And if you don't know, you want to know, want to learn. That's how we grow. Like, we learn. We learn new stuff, new things all the time. Just get inquisitive. Ask questions. Look at prints. You don't understand what the print says. Ask somebody. What's that mean? What's that symbol? What does this mean? That's how you grow. That's how you get better. You know what I mean? You're inquisitive. You want to know.
I would say, just from personal experience, and as a younger person, I was very bad about asking questions. I would fall in that camp where I should probably know it. And then you either make mistakes or you go out and you try to quickly figure out what in the world that guy was just talking about. As a younger person, I definitely fell in that camp. And but as I get older, I think I'm the king of stupid questions now. Would you agree?
You ask me a lot of stupid questions. You do.
Yeah, you do. Okay.
You
I don't even care anymore. It's fine. So, trying to find the answers to questions is good. And I would, for sure, with the trainees and apprentices, like, obviously, arrive on time, everybody. But I think that trainees, they show up so back on their heels, and they're so unsure. It's a whole new world to them. And, it depends on who you're getting saddled up with. I mean, you can get one superintendent who's real coddling, or you can get one that's super gruff. And so there is this thing where it's maybe not the best learning educational environment. But these are really good points. Follow directions, read and listen. But the point is that, usually on interviews, I'll tell people, like, I want you to make $100,000 a year with us. I actually got that line from you. But regardless, because if that person is making that kind of money or getting to that certain kind of whatever level, it's because they're highly valuable, highly knowledgeable, and they've taken a great deal of energy to get that way. It didn't just happen. And so they're a very valuable person to me, to Kalos. And then I look them in the eye and I just say, well, what do you want? Right? Because I can give you opportunities. That's what I can give you. But I don't necessarily want to hear how good you think you are, because you're probably not a very good judge yourself. I'm not either. But go out and actually do what you want to do, and keep growing and get better and learn. And I think that starts with the trainees. Like, who do you want to be? Not to get philosophical, but here's my 4 life lessons.
This sounds philosophical.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
I don't mean to get it, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
Who do you want to be? Which can be, what do you want to do? And so you ask that question to yourself. Who do I want to be? It can be something mundane, like I want to be more patient. It could be that, right? It could be I want to be president of Kalos, whatever. So you ask yourself these questions: who do I want to be? What do I want to do? That's the first question. The second question is why, right? Because if you can't answer the question, then it's not very important to you. Okay, so who do I want to be? Why do I want to be this thing or have this attribute? Third is, how am I going to accomplish this? What's the path? What's the plan? How am I going to do it, right? I use this over and over in my own life, and that's why I'm an abysmal failure. But I think it's valid. So now you've done these 3 things, which actually could take you a great deal of effort. But you actually haven't done anything until you do number 4, which is you go and you actually do it. You have to put your hands to it. You have to put your mind to it. You actually have to get into it, engage into it. And so I would tell everybody on here, including myself, that those 4 things are super helpful for me. That, who do I want to be? Why? How? And go do it. You'll make plenty of mistakes in there. But again, you're going to go back to that 30,000 foot view and ask yourself the question again: is this really what this is? Is this really what I want to be? You might get into it, I have a friend of mine who went to college for 4 years to be an architect and found out about year 3 that he hates it, he'll never do it, but he finished because like, well, dang, I'm already 3 years into it, got an architecture degree and hates it. So, reevaluate. Yeah, I guess that's what I would, that would be my input on this. Because you're just continuing to grow. When you start here, you move here, you've learned a lot of stuff here, and then you're moving here, and you're putting yourself into positions of some anxious spots. Like you're probably stepping in maybe a little sooner than you should. We need each other to help each other, and so you ask questions to people like, how would you do this if like I'm a little unsure. Like it's okay. So that's my shtick.
Sure. Good.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. And again, like you can see, so as you're learning, then you're following, and then you're knowing plans and specs, and those are three different levels. You're following directions, you're communicating with leadership, and then you're communicating constantly and constructively. Like there's different levels of responsibility as you move up, but at each level you have a responsibility. First starting mostly with yourself, then with the small team and the work that you're working on, and then for the entire project.
Yeah, so I want to comment on this because this is like this set clear requirement. I just read this. Sorry,
okay, it's fine.
Because like. Really good superintendents had this quality. I've met them and they're really good. And then you'll say, hey, I gotta have. When's you gonna have? You said the thing was gonna be done. When it be done? I'm gonna get to it this week. The response should be, you look them in the eye and say, when? What day? And you may want to say, by noon, end of day. Like get really specific. Look them in the eye, and they'll get used to it. Like, okay, when I deal with this guy, I can't vague my way out of this. Like, be demanding that way. I want you to commit. You're gonna be done by Wednesday, because I got other people coming in, and I want to know Wednesday, when, end of the day, by 3 in the morning. Just to get really specific with people and make them commit. Really good superintendents they're not intimidated. They don't care if the guy's 6'8" and his first name is Shaq. They don't care. You just don't care. Like, I got a job to do and we're gonna get it done. Like, that's just the attitude. And yeah, I'm a nice guy, I want people to succeed, but like when it comes, I don't care. Like, you told me Wednesday, I expect Wednesday, okay? And just that kind of demeanor, really, really good running projects. So anyway, sorry.
Superintendent, you're going to sometimes be the one who sets that. You're going to tell them, you're going to set the standards of
sure.
This quality by this time, I'm going to come back and
sure.
reevaluate again.
So anyway.
I want to talk about a couple tools, and these are tools, I'm using kind of universal tools that I would suggest to almost everybody, not everybody. But they're at your disposal. And one that we're definitely not using as often as we could be is Google Calendar. Because you may have different project management tools that you use. A lot of you are now using Trello, and so you're kind of using that for project management. You're using Slack. We're moving to Google Chat and Google, it's not called Teams. What's it called? Google Spaces. Google Spaces moving forward, and that's for team communication. But putting things on your calendar is really handy, and we all have access to these kind of shared company calendars where you can interact with other people, and it's a really handy thing to do. And so I know most of I know this because I've looked at it, the majority of the employees at Kalos are not using Google Calendar at all personally. And so that's a problem because it's difficult to set up things with one another if you never even look at it or you don't take it seriously. So you get a calendar invite and you're like, well, I'll just show up, but I'm not going to hit accept or decline. I'm not going to interact with that invite. And so it's kind of a cultural challenge that we face. The website has a calendar in it, but that's really designed for, it's really mostly designed for service, dispatching jobs, and maybe showing the beginning of projects. It's really not designed for you scheduling things for yourself. But even superintendent's foreman, that kind of thing, you can use that as a tool in order to interact with other people, even outside the organization. And again, that's going to vary depending on the type of client you have and the type of job you do. But I would say everybody, there's a role for Google Calendar in what you're doing. If you're not using it right now, you should really start using it. Even if it's just for your personal life. You can put your dentist in there. You can put those other things because that's going to, again, managing your personal life is going to help you manage your work life and going to keep those surprises from happening. As a joke, I had Danielle put all my kids' birthdays on my Google Calendar. Actually, that was a joke. It wasn't a joke. I never remember when their birthdays are. I have too many kids. So next one is Trello. I want you to all understand what Trello is. So Trello is something called a Kanban board. And what a Kanban board is it's basically sticky notes. So I could build a Kanban board right now on this whiteboard, and all I would do is just draw 2 lines. and I would write above in these 3 columns that I created, I would write to do, doing, and done. And then I would take sticky notes and I would write on the sticky notes things that need doing, and I would put it on to do. And then when I'm doing it, I would take it and I would move it to doing, and then when I'm done, I'd move it to done. Does that make sense? And you can utilize Trello for things outside of even the Kalos organization, for other things in your life if you want. But I would encourage you to not overthink it, to not get it overcomplicated in your head about it being some big fancy complicated thing that's making your life more difficult. If it is being used in a way that creates noise, well then let's eliminate the noise. Because one of the really big things that can happen as you grow as an organization is you start to have communications that are not valuable, meaning that you're not learning new information, or the information that you are learning isn't pertinent to you. And so when that begins to happen, have conversations with the powers that be in order to get that fixed. We don't want anybody spending time sitting in meetings, doing busy work, anything that doesn't actually impact the job. Now, when your client forces it on you, like sometimes our clients do, then that's where we do things like what we're doing with the comm team, where as much as possible we want to offload any of that busy work with people who can focus on that so that you can focus on doing your job. But that doesn't mean that you don't need some method of tracking things as they go through the life cycle. What needs to be done and when? Am I doing it, or who's doing it and what are they doing? And then when is it done? And what does it look like? And is it done properly? Right? It's a project management and follow-up tool, because fundamentally that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure we have all the resources and information lined up. We want to make sure that everybody knows when they need to do it and by when, and then we need to follow up to make sure it was done. That's what project management is. It really isn't that much more complicated than that, other than all the complications. That was a joke. Next thing is Loom. I'm really on a roll here today. Next thing is Loom. Loom, for anyone who works in front of a screen for any amount of time during the day, I would suggest that you start using Loom. Because what Loom allows you to do is you can basically, it puts you in a little corner, your face in the little corner in the bottom, and now you can screen record. I use it to communicate all the time. Like if I have somebody send me an email and it's a complicated email and I don't have time to sit there and fat finger this email out, even if I'm sitting in front of a computer because I have very fat, short fingers, I'll just turn on Loom and I'll have their email up on my screen, and then I'll literally just talk through my responses to each point. So I have my cursor and I'm just kind of highlighting, here's this, here's this, here's this, and it probably saves me 30% of the time that it takes to normally respond. And it's also very personal. Now some people don't like that, like you wouldn't do that to a high-end client, in a corporate environment. But for communication with subs, communication with other people within Kalos, you can actually communicate a lot more information, and it also doesn't come across as snarky when you do it that way. So a lot of us, when we're typing, sometimes what we type comes across like we're being more aggressive than we really are. Or sometimes you want it to come across really aggressive, and let me tell you, you can really make something come across aggressive with Loom. It's very handy. They can see the veins. They can see the hair loss. It's a good sign. So those are 3 tools that I want all of you to at least consider using. Loom being one that if you're a field worker, you're not going to use it. If everything you're doing is on your phone, you're not going to use it. But if you're spending time behind a computer, I would highly suggest you start using that tool because it will save you time.
So Trello for us, building a board and utilizing the tool. That's what I would encourage people. Don't make the tool more than you need it, because then the tool ends up owning you. I have different boards, different boards that are more interactive with my team members. You can put checklists on them. It's great. Everybody can collaborate on that. And then I have some that are just for me. So you can literally create a Trello board in about less than 30 seconds, probably. Always, hey, if this is helpful, but. Always my first list on a Trello board is called dump bin, and I just close my eyes and I just make a card for every single item that comes into my brain. Then you can make lists and you can just start dragging them to those different lists. So that was helpful for me.
Yeah. And the thing is, we're already paying for it for everybody, so make use of it. In terms of software, like when anything that Google does can do it, or Trello can do it, then that's the tool we need to be using. I get a lot of suggestions of like, well, there's this specialty thing we could use, and it could do this or that, and that's great, but we're already paying for these ones. So just because you're not comfortable with it and you'd rather use a Microsoft software, I don't care, because we have to pay for that every time, and then it also doesn't interact as well. So we've got like unlimited Google Drive space. We've got a lot of tools within the Google Suite that we're not even taking advantage of yet. And the goal is to keep us in single sets of software as much as possible. We don't want to keep adding on software. We want to try to keep it as simple as we can. And where there are significant deficiencies, we can communicate about it, but we want to have a minimalist approach to tools. Tools are there to serve us. We're not there to serve tools. And some of us love tools. I love tools. I love being nerdy about things. And so I can get super excited in my personal life about things, but then I've got to kind of give it up when I show up here to say what is going to be efficient and effective for a team of 300 people. All right, so excuses. These are some of the ones that I've heard a lot, so I'll let you kind of riff on some of these.
Yeah, so I think it was a while back, we came to the conclusion that Slack and Trello can be the great big excuse. Yeah, put it on Trello, well, did you follow up on Trello? Did you make sure the guy actually got it? Heck, give the guy a call. Like it's an important thing here, because there's some important things, I forget what it was, but some really important things didn't get done. And then that was the excuse why I put it on, And then I think in that case, he only copied one person or something, and then I forget what it was, but so they can be that. So you want to make sure that's not the case. We're using it, it's not an excuse. We're trying to be efficient. They never responded. You should always follow up. You should always follow up. You know what? You should always follow up. Okay, can I say it enough? Just if it's important, follow up. People make excuses, they don't get it. It's probably a majority of the reasons that communication fails. Whether they did or they didn't want to hear it. You follow up and you force the conversation. Did you get the email? You follow up and make sure they got it. I don't want to micromanage. I love this because when we first started, I was accused of that a lot. Still, not as much anymore. I'm not involved in day-to-day as much anymore, but I was really accused, particularly younger guys. They say, well, you micromanage, and just so y'all get the vibe, call me, use whatever term you want. Call me what you want, I don't really care. I'm about one thing. We're going to get the job done. Okay, we have these tasks and we're going to get it done. And right now there's gaps and you're not doing it. I'm involved. If you don't like me being around, then start, solving your own problems and get it done. Micromanage, it can be a problem. I think for good managers, though, really good managers, I don't call me what you want. I'm just going to make sure it gets done. Period. That's it. Whatever it takes. There's been times that I've actually strapped a tool. Was like that? I've done some electrical work, and sure, we had to. Early in the days, you had to do what you did. And I would just say that. I want to add that to it. It's just there is this overriding principle: is you do whatever you got to do. I heard a guy tell me one time, for business owners that have people that work for them, the first time they pick up a hammer to do any work, they lose. They get these conferences and they say these really nice things, and I just laugh. Okay. Unless you have something for your customer to get done, and someone has to pick up the hammer, and you're the only one left, pick up the damn hammer. That's just, you just do whatever it takes. And sure, we should have enough people to do it, and we need to manage properly, we need to communicate. But be careful with micromanage. You can micromanage. You need to give some guys some space. If they've proven themselves, you can trust them, give them their space. I think that's good management. Guy knows what he's doing. Every time he tells you something, he takes care of it, you give him his space. You let him do his work. But you get involved when you have to. Is it my responsibility? Yep. It's just things that you hear all the time. Wasn't my job. Just, I just stop that. You're there. You're Kalos. This is what makes us good. It's why you're going to make more money. You know why you're going to get a bonus? The customer likes us, and we're really efficient, and we get the job done on time. It's that simple. And if something's wrong, it's your responsibility. And maybe it's the refrigeration guys. You can say, well, I don't have refrigeration guys. I don't know. They don't work for me. Whatever it is, whatever the problem is, you just don't look the other. Well, it's really common. That's really common. You just look the other way. It's easy. It's really a human trait. We just I don't want to deal with this. I didn't see it. Don't do that. No, if you see it, no, something's wrong. We address it. So anyway, I told them we didn't have time. Yeah, those are all really good ones. So I don't know. I think I've said enough on that. So anyway, go ahead, Keith.
I just want to say one thing about it.
Go ahead.
I want to translate this right here. With that, the translation of that is I don't care. That's what you're saying. I don't care. And so, yes, it is. If you're thinking about it, yeah, it is. Because if you cared, you would bring it up to whoever. It doesn't mean you have to fix it. I'm not saying you have to fix it. I'm not saying that any of us are in the have the ability to fix whatever this is, but you do have the ability to tell somebody, like to make them aware, right? So that just means who gives a crap?
Sure.
And so, yeah, lots of excuses, but that one kind of just sticks out to me because you hear it. You know, I told them, they never responded as one. This is in my world every day. I call people 6 times because you realize that when you send the email and the follow-up email and the phone call, you left a voice message, and it's 4 days later and they still haven't responded, and it's not resolved in you yet, then you keep going until it's resolved. That's how it is, you know. Man, I wish I could do one email to each person and they would respond, but it doesn't happen. It's 5 and 6 over and over and over. But because I could say, well, not my responsibility.
But these are, I would say, these are the things that go on. It is common in society and in construction, probably any company, you know. And even when I do business as a consumer, I'll run into these things. It's just, this is the stuff you hear from really bad companies that have really bad culture. It's just what it is. Like that's, and they kind of accept it. And like, I'm just determined at Kalos we're not. Like I'll fight it all day long till I die. Like no. We're going to be the ones that look you in the eye and say, no, I want an answer. When? I want to know. I'm going to follow up. I'm not going to make excuses. I mean, we're just going to make sure that we know. We got an answer.
Yeah, and a lot of this is speaking to something that I just want to point out is that there is a generational thing. So people who are millennials and Gen Z, which I'm actually technically a millennial, don't like conflict, like almost across the board. There's very few who do. As a group, they just like conflict less. And so being called a micromanager is like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a micromanager. You know, my parents were micromanagers. I don't want to be a micromanager. Well, I told them, that isn't my responsibility. They never responded. All of that is just saying that, like, I don't want to push into the conflict
Right.
zone. I don't want to see dislike in someone else's eyes. I don't want them to, when they're in the corner and they're whispering, to have it be about me and how I'm such a jerk and how I don't know, and if I didn't like, you should do it if you don't like it, you know, that sort of stuff. That talk happens all the time. And here's the thing: if you're a good leader, that talk is going to happen. Just is. So I think getting over that, and this is true of everyone. Again, like this is true of the apprentice or the trainee in your personal life that results in you making it to work every day on time. Right? Because if you're the type of person who makes it to work every day on time, sometimes you're going to have to tell people things they don't want to hear. Sometimes you're going to have to tell people no about stuff. And they're going to think you're a jerk because you do that. Right? They're going to think that you're not as cool as you used to be. You're not as fun as you used to be. Right? It's part of it. So when you're that journeyman and you have the helper and the helper's on their phone, what do you need to do? Get off your phone. You need to stay off your phone. And the next time they're on their phone, you know what you do? Get off your phone. You need to stay off your phone. And the third time, and the fourth time, and the fifth time, and the sixth time, you need to keep doing it. And then eventually you tell somebody, this guy won't get off his phone. But the reality is that when you tell them once, they don't think you're serious. They just don't. And then that's when you say, I'm serious. You need to get off your phone. You don't need to call them a name. You don't need to throw anything. You don't throw a wrench at them. But that's what it takes. And people will take that as, man, this guy's a real jerk. He's a real square. You know, like, no, that's what it is. When the subcontractor keeps doing things where the lines are, you know, they're not taping and the lines look like crap and things aren't coming out the way they're supposed to come out, you just keep over and over, no, it has to be redone. That's not good enough. You go back, no, that has to be redone. It's not good enough. No, that doesn't look right. This is what it needs to look like. That's what that looks like. And is that micromanagement? Well, a lot of people are going to feel like it is.
Right. I want to add, because this sounds really negative. What I really want to we want to treat people with respect. Like all humans have the same respect that none of us is better than the other. Make that really clear. And so you can always, people that speak that way, that understand it, it just feels different. But it's okay. Like you need to be firm and I don't, if I step on your toes, I don't mean to. I'm not. But be just as concerned. Really good leaders, when someone does something good, you verbalize it. And sometimes people have a hard time with that. You know, it's a little funny. Just say, man, that was a really good job. That's what I was looking for. Great job. Hey, if they consistently do really great, well, just say, hey, I'll talk. We need to get you a raise. You're doing a great job. Really verbalize. Just be dead honest and then verbalize. It's really important. People need to be encouraged, but they also need to know when they're not doing well. Like we're not going to just, everybody gets a trophy kind of thing. No, not so much. So.
Yeah, and praise should be specific. So as much as possible,
Sure.
We do this a lot in Slack and the announcement channel when people get attaboys with clients. Look for opportunities to be very specific in your praise towards what people are doing well.
Yep.
That is the example.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what that guy's doing.
He's scraping the floor.
Yeah, looks like he's scraping the floor. Yeah.
He's a floor guy. He's taking up the old flooring. Yeah.
He's got a lightning bolt.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this we did discuss already. Getting engaged early, looking for the challenges and the bumps in the road. This is a good one. How do you reinforce and have conversations with people early on where they're having some issues and they're seeing things just their way, right? I get that quite a little bit where I need to call a specific person and give them a little more data, right? Like they just see the world from whether they're a superintendent on one particular project, that's all they see, and they don't understand, like, I don't even know why we have to do this 3 times. I don't know why. Well, or so-and-so is this and so-and-so is that, and I don't like, the way they looked at me. But really just being personal with people and letting them, kind of reinforcing that you actually do care about them and what's going on. Again, above it, don't let critical matters be ignored. That's good.
Yep.
That would be, in my past recent life, that would be a hard one for me to kind of just let things go. So now as I get older, you can have really good, positive conversations and fix most of this stuff without,
Sure.
Sure. How do you do that in a creative way? To reinforce the fact, like, I actually care about you. I do want you to do better. And, you may have a couple guys on a job that just will not get along, and so, you don't put them together as much as you can, Because I have people that love one helper, and that another superintendent will actually not like that helper at all. So it's like, well, they're a better team together. So, but prevent issues before they start. That's the main header. Yeah, just planning ahead. And I guess that can be, it seems like you're going into more personnel.
Some people ask me, what do you do for a living? And I'm a professional body language reader. And I say that jokingly, but like over time, after 40 years, like you just learn to read people, whether it's the customer or employees, and you learn it on job sites. You tell somebody something. Yeah, I mean, how many times have you had this happen? You tell somebody something. Yeah, you got to put the widget in the woo-ha, and you got to do this thing. And they're like, yeah. And you can tell by their language, like, this guy has no idea what I'm talking about. But he's shaking his head, yeah. Then you rephrase it, and he'll be like, yeah. Then all of a sudden you'll say it a certain way. He goes, oh. Like, why were you shaking your head yeah the whole time? But look, people will do that all the time. And really, grow in that way. Get a feel like, no, this guy, he's not getting it. Like, he's going to go south here quick if I don't step in, and it just happens over time. You'll get used to it. You read people, like, and anyway. But I think then you'll just develop it with a lot of people. With customers, I can tell they're unhappy. If you ask them, everything okay? Everything's great. How many people are married? Yeah, how many does that time happen? You ask you, right, everything, you can tell something, everything all right? Everything's fine. Okay, I'm not believing that. So anyway, I just add that to it. So do a little more than just listen to what they say, kind of read, that's really valuable. So.
Everything here we've talked about quite a bit already, but the last two I want to make sure, because I think it applies a lot right now, and I think it's just worth saying that a lot of people aren't doing great right now. Like this has been a tough, this goes without saying, but it's been a tough couple years for a lot of people. And now we've got this kind of change in the economy that is creating some anxiety in people and inflation and all this stuff that's going on. And so people have a lot going on in their lives, and it does create a lot of conflict. And a lot of people are kind of already dealing with stuff before you even show up, and that plays into a lot of things that are going on. So having humility is super key in all of this, because if you come into, and this is the difference between having clear and consistent communication. It's kind of like, sometimes we'll call things nagging, and it's like my wife will say, well, you're going to take the garbage out. It's like, look, I told you I'd do it. You don't have to remind me every 6 months. This is way too often. Hey, that was a joke.
All right.
No, but the point just is like, you can be really clear and still be humble, and especially when people start to go sideways on you, that's where humility is the right lever to pull there. When you're starting to lose somebody, and they're getting emotional, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? humility, like, hey, sorry about that. I want to kind of understand what's going on. How can we help? You go humble. And then finally, keeping your head in the game is really key.
Yeah.
And it is something that, in the technician world, I call it emotionally checking out. It's like you're still there, like your body's still there, but your heart and your mind are somewhere else because it's just gotten to be too much. It's just too much, so I'm just going through the motions at this point. And what you have to realize, or what we all have to realize when we get to that stage is that doesn't help anybody. And it doesn't help you most of all, because it puts you in a position where things aren't going to go well on your job, things aren't going to go well in your personal life. It's a good indication that things are about to go the wrong direction. And so it's a nice time to get together and talk to somebody. In terms of projects, project planning and project communication, when we have a bunch of people whose heads are in the game and they're doing these things, the projects go really well. And most of that is not people who are like the world's most amazing tradespeople, although that does help. But we already have a lot of that at Kalos. We already have a lot of really good tradespeople. And we have a lot of really good resources. So especially here, if we do these things well, and especially this one, then we will successfully execute projects. We can blame it on lack of tools. We can say, oh, the software's not as good as it should be or this or that. But that's why a lot of what we're talking about here is like, well, yeah, that's kind of obvious. That's sort of no duh, right? Well, yeah, because it is actually kind of obvious. It's just a matter of executing on it. All right, so I'm going to let you guys. Anything you guys want to close with? That was kind of my close there. Anything else you want to do? Okay, so I want to open up for questions. Any questions in the room, and any questions in chat, or you can actually even unmute yourself on the computer if you guys have any. I know often there aren't any questions, but this is the opportunity. I'm not just saying it. If there's something you want to know, it's very rare that the three of us are here in a room, and if there's something that's like, hey, I thought of this, go ahead and ask it. You're free to do so. So. Open it up to the room here and online. Phil.
I would ask, do you think there's a difference between excuses and reasons?
A reason is that you actually want to do this thing, but you have challenges. And an excuse is that you don't want to do it.
Yeah. I was going to say, it comes down to motive.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's obvious and sometimes not so much. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Any other questions? None online? All right.
Thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed it and got something out of it, if you wouldn't mind hitting the thumbs up button to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notifications bell to be notified when new videos come out. HVAC School is far more than a YouTube channel. You can find out more by going to hvacrschool.com, which is our website and hub for all of our content, including tech tips, videos, podcasts, and so much more. You can also subscribe to the podcast on any podcast app of your choosing. You can also join our Facebook group if you want to weigh in on the conversation yourself. Thanks again for watching.